Finns of Finnish people are a Finnic ethnic group native to Finland. The group ethnic Finns includes smaller groups in several countries, some of whom are native to these countries and some who have immigrated there. The groups that are native to the countries include the Baltic Finns of Finland, and smaller native populations in neighboring countries include the Kvens and Forest Finns in Norway, the Tornedalians of Sweden, and the Ingrian Finns of Russia. The groups that have immigrated to the respective countries include the Finnish-speaking population of Sweden and groups in the United States, Canada, Brazil and Australia. Finnish, the language spoken by most Baltic Finns, is closely related to other Finnic languages, e.g., Estonian and Karelian. The Finnic languages are a subgroup to the Uralic family of languages, which also includes Hungarian. These languages are markedly different from most other languages spoken in Europe, which belong to the Indo-European family of languages. Native Finns can be divided according to dialect into subgroups, sometimes called Himo, although such divisions have become less important due to internal migration. Subgroups. The Population Register Centre maintains information on the birthplace, citizenship and mother tongue of the people living in Finland, but does not specifically categorize any as Finns by ethnicity. Baltic Finns. The majority of people living in the Republic of Finland consider Finnish to be the first language. According to statistics, Finland, of the country's total population of 5,300,484 at the end of 2007, 91.2% considered Finnish to be the native language. It is not known how many of the ethnic Finns living outside Finland speak Finnish as the first language. In addition to the Finnish-speaking inhabitants of Finland, the Kvens, the Tornedalians, and the Karelians in the historic Finnish province of Karelia and evangelical Lutheran Ingrian Finns, as well as Finnish expatriates in various countries, are Baltic Finns. Finns have been traditionally divided into subgroups along regional, dialectical or ethnographical lines. These subgroups include the people of Finland proper, Satakunta, Tavastia, Savo, Karelia and Ostrobothnia. These subgroups express regional self-identity with varying frequency and significance. There are a number of distinct dialects of the Finnish language spoken in Finland, although the exclusive use of the standard Finnish, both in its formal written and more casual spoken form, in Finnish schools, in the media, and in popular culture, along with internal migration and urbanization, have considerably diminished the use of regional varieties, especially since the middle of the 20th century. Historically, there were three dialects, the Southwestern, Tavastian, and Karelian. These and neighboring languages mixed with each other in various ways as the population spread out, and evolved into the Southern Ostrobothnian, Central Ostrobothnian, Northern Ostrobothnian, Far Northern, Savonian, and Southeastern aka South Karelian dialects. Sweden Finns. The Sweden Finns are either native to Sweden or have emigrated from Finland to Sweden. An estimated 450,000 first- to second-generation immigrants from Finland live in Sweden, of which approximately half speak Finnish. The majority moved from Finland to Sweden following the Second World War, taking advantage of the rapidly expanding Swedish economy. This emigration peaked in 1970 and has been declining since. There are also native Finnish-speaking minorities in Sweden, e.g., the Tornedalians and the Finns of Dalecarlia. The Finnish language has official status as one of 5 minority languages in Sweden. Other groups. The term Finns is also used for other Finnic peoples, including Igorians in Ingria, Karelians in Karelia and Veps in the former Veps National Volost, all in Russia. Among these groups, the Karelians is the most populous one, followed by the Ingrians. According to a 2002 census, it was found that these have refused the distinct Ingrian identity and identified themselves as ethnic Finns. Terminology. The Finnish term for Finns is suomalaiset. It is a matter of debate how best to designate the Finnish speakers of Sweden, all of whom have migrated to Sweden from Finland. Terms used include Sweden Finns and Finnish Swedes, with a distinction almost always made between more recent Finnish immigrants, most of whom have arrived after World War II, and Tornedalians, who have lived along what is now the Swedish-Finnish border since the 15th century. Etymology. Historical references to Northern Europe are scarce, and the names given to its peoples and geographic regions are obscure. Therefore, the etymologies of the names are questionable. Such names as Veni, Finnoi, Finnum, and Skrith-Finni, Scride-Finnim appear in a few written texts starting from about 2 millennia ago in association with peoples located in a northern part of Europe. But the real meaning of these terms is debatable. The earliest mentions of this kind are usually interpreted to have meant Fenno-Scandian hunter-gatherers whose closest successors in modern terms would be the Sami people. It has been suggested that this non-Uralic ethnonym is of Germanic language origin unrelated to such words as Finth and fine. Notice, Fanthi and Czech try and Fendo and Vend pedestrian wanderer. Another etymological interpretation associates this ethnonym with Fen in a more toponymical approach. Yet another theory postulates that the words Finn and Kven are cognates. The Icelandic Eddas and Norse sagas, some of the oldest written sources probably originating from the closest proximity, use words like Finnar and Finnars inconsistently. However, most of the time they seem to mean northern dwellers with a mobile lifestyle. An etymological link between the Sami and the Finns exists in modern Uralic languages as well. It has been proposed that e.g., the toponyms Sapmi, Suomi, and Heim are of the same origin, the source of which might be related to the Proto-Baltic word *zim, Slavic meaning land. It has been proposed that these designations started to mean specifically people in southwestern Finland and later the whole area of modern Finland. But it is not known how, why, and when this occurred. Petri Kallio has suggested that the name Suomi may bear even earlier Indo-European echoes with the original meaning of either land or human. Among the first written documents possibly designating Western Finland as the land of Finns are 2 rune stones. One of these is in Soderby, Sweden, with the inscription Finland, and the other is in Gotland, a Swedish island in the Baltic Sea, with the inscription Finland dating from the 11th century. History. With regard to the ancestry of the Finnish people, the modern view emphasizes the overall continuity in Finland's archaeological finds and linguistic surroundings. Archaeological data suggest the spreading of at least cultural influences from many sources ranging from the southeast to the southwest following gradual developments rather than clear-cut migrations. Just as uncertain of the possible mediators and the timelines for the development of the Uralic majority language of the Finns, on the basis of comparative linguistics, it has been suggested that the separation of the Finnic and the Sami languages took place during the 2nd millennium BC, and that the Proto-Uralic roots of the entire language group date from about the 6th to the 8th millennium BC, when the Uralic languages were first spoken in the area of contemporary Finland is a matter of controversy. It is thought that Proto-Finnic was not spoken in modern Finland, because the maximum divergence of the daughter languages occurs in modern-day Estonia. Therefore, Finnish was already a separate language when arriving in Finland. Furthermore, the traditional Finnish lexicon has a large number of words without a known etymology, hinting at the existence of a disappeared Paleo-European language. These include toponyms such as Nimi Peninsula. A gradual displacement of the Sami people by Finns has continued to this day. Toponyms suggest that the Sami lived in all of Finland in prehistory, and up to the 17th century, Finnish was not widely spoken in the north, because the Finnish language itself reached a written form only in the 16th century. Little primary data remains of early Finnish life. For example, the origins of such cultural icons as the sauna, the kantele, and the kalevala have remained rather obscure. Agriculture supplemented by fishing and hunting has been the traditional livelihood among Finns. Slash and burn agriculture was practiced in the forest-covered east by Eastern Finns up to the 19th century. Agriculture, along with the language, distinguishes Finns from the Sami, who retained the hunter-gatherer lifestyle longer and moved to coastal fishing and reindeer herding. Following industrialization and modernization of Finland, most Finns were urbanized and employed in modern service and manufacturing occupations, with agriculture becoming a minor employer. Western and southern coastal regions and islands have concentrations of the Finland-Swedish. Differences in occupational structure between this minority and the rest are minor in modern times. Nevertheless, the most Swedish occupation is still fishermen. Finland's Swedish speakers descend from peasants and fishermen who settled coastal Finland, California, 1000 to 1250, from the subsequent immigration during Swedish sovereignty over Finland, and from Finns and immigrants who adopted the Swedish language. Phenomania in the 19th and early 20th century led to some minor language change into Finnish, but this was of little consequence in comparison to ordinary demographic trends, which reduced the proportion of Swedish speakers during the entire 20th century from 12.9% to 5.6%. Subdivisions. Baltic Finns are traditionally assumed to originate from two different populations speaking different dialects of Proto-Finnic. Thus, a division into West Finnish and East Finnish is made. Further, there are subgroups, traditionally called Himo, according to dialects and local culture, although ostensibly based on late Iron Age settlement patterns. The Himos have been constructed according to dialect during the rise of nationalism in the 19th century. Western Hame, Tavastians are Hame people. Ostrobothnia, Southern Ostrobothnians have a particularly distinct identity and dialect. Central Ostrobothnians, Northern Ostrobothnians, Norrbotten, Sweden, speakers of Meänkieli, a far northern dialect of Finnish southwestern Finland. Varsone-suomalaiset, Eastern Ingrian Finns, Karelia, Karelian Finns. Karelian dialects of Finnish are distinct from the Karelian language spoken in Russia, and most of northern Karelia actually speak Savonian dialects. Savonian people speak the Savo dialect. Emigrants. Forest Finns of Sweden. Finnish immigrants to Sweden. Kvens of Finnmark, Norway. Other emigrant Finns. The historical provinces of Finland can be seen to approximate some of these divisions. The regions of Finland, another remnant of a past governing system, can be seen to reflect a further manifestation of a local identity. Today's Finns are not usually aware of the concept of Himo, nor do they typically identify with one, although the use of dialects has experienced a recent revival. Urbanized Finns do not necessarily know a particular dialect and tend to use standard Finnish or city slang, but they may switch to a dialect when visiting the native area. Genetics. Recently, the use of mitochondrial mtDNA and Y-chromosomal DNA markers in tracing back the history of human populations has been started. For the paternal and maternal genetic lineages of Finnish people and other peoples, c.e. e.g., the National Geographic Genographic Project and the Suomi DNA Project. Haplogroup U5 is estimated to be the oldest mtDNA haplogroup in Europe and is found in the whole of Europe at a low frequency, but seems to be found in significantly higher levels among Finns, Estonians and the Sami people. With regard to the Y chromosome, the most common haplogroups of the Finns are N1C, I1N, R1A and R1B. Haplogroup N1C, which is found mainly in a few countries in Europe, is a subgroup of the haplogroup N distributed across northern Eurasia and estimated in a 2006 study to be 10,000–20,000 years old and suggested to have entered Europe about 12,000–14,000 years ago from Asia. Variation within Finns is, according to fixation index values, greater than anywhere else in Europe. Greatest intra-Finnish FSD distance is found about 60, greatest intra-Swedish FSD distance about 25. FSD distances between, for example, Germans, French and Hungarians is only 10, and between Estonians, Russians and Poles it is also 10. Thus Finns from different parts of the country are more remote from each other genetically compared to many European peoples between themselves. The closest genetic relatives for Finns are Estonians and Swedes. The FSD values given here are actual values multiplied by 10,000. The great intra-Finnish distance between Western Finns and Eastern Finns supports the theorized dual origin of the Finns based on the regional distribution of the two major Y-DNA haplogroups, N1C in Eastern Finland and I1A in Western Finland. Finns show very little if any Mediterranean and African genes, but on the other hand almost 10% of Finnish genes seem to be shared with Siberian populations. Nevertheless, more than 80% of Finnish genes are from a single ancient northeastern European population, while most Europeans are a mixture of three or more principal components. Theories of the origins of ethnic Finns. In the 19th century, the Finnish researcher Matthias Castrén prevailed with the theory that the original home of Finns was in west-central Siberia. Until the 1970s, most linguists believed that Finns arrived in Finland as late as the 1st centuries AD, but accumulating archaeological data suggested that the area of contemporary Finland had been inhabited continuously since the end of the Ice Age, contrary to the earlier idea that the area had experienced long uninhabited intervals. The hunter-gatherer Sami were pushed into the more remote northern regions. A hugely controversial theory is so-called refugia. This was proposed in the 1990s by Kalevi Week, a professor emeritus of phonetics at the University of Turku. According to this theory, Finno-Ugric speakers spread north as the Ice Age ended. They populated Central and Northern Europe, while Basque speakers populated Western Europe. As agriculture spread from the southeast into Europe, the Indo-European languages spread among the hunter-gatherers. In this process, both the hunter-gatherers speaking Finno-Ugric and those speaking Basque learned how to cultivate land and became Indo-Europeanized. According to Week, this is how the Celtic, Germanic, Slavic, and Baltic languages were formed. The linguistic ancestors of modern Finns did not switch the language due to their isolated location. The main supporters of Week's theory are Professor Ago Kunap, Professor Kyösti Julku and Associate Professor Angela Marcantonio. Week has not presented his theories in peer-reviewed scientific publications. Many scholars in Finno-Ugrian studies have strongly criticized the theory, especially Professor Raimo Antila. Petri Kallio and brothers Antti and Aslak Aikio have renounced Week's theory with strong words, hinting strongly to pseudoscience and even at right-wing political biases among Week's supporters. Moreover, some dismiss the entire idea of refugee due to the existence even today of Arctic and subarctic peoples. The most heated debate took place in the Finnish journal Kaltio during autumn 2002. Since then, the debate has calmed, each side retaining the positions. While the refugee theory proved unpopular among Finns, substantial genotype analyses across the greater European genetic landscape have mostly confirmed the last glacial maximum refugiums to be correct, and have substantial backing of the greater scientific community. But this does not in any way corroborate or prove that these refugees spoke Uralic Finnic, as it belies wholly independent variables that are not necessarily coeval.